I'm choked up before I'm even started. Good gosh. Thanks. Whew. I thought I was prepared to do this. Eulogizing my dad in a couple minutes, it's impossible. So I'm going to do the best I can. Thank you all for being here. It means the world to us. It really does. And I want to tell everyone here, we are here to celebrate a life. We're sad he's not here. It's sad when a human life is over. But if there's a life we're celebrating, did you hear the words she just said? This is it. He led my dad, if you saw those pictures in there, he led an adventurous, wonderful life. He overcame everything my sister talked about. He married an amazing woman, was married for 55 years to my mom, Rose. They raised 2 children who have families of their own. My dad lived long enough to know and love his 5 grandchildren, who called him Opa. And most importantly, my dad had a deep faith in the Lord. We all worry about where we're going to go, right? But I know where my dad is. And I know that we're going to see him for eternity. And frankly, we're going to need all that time if he's telling stories. When a lot of Dan, you call that guy every morning, right? When my dad told Bob, it's not like my dad told a story. My dad told Bob Lutz stories. When he told a story, you got every minute detail, no matter how irrelevant it was. And there's probably some angels up there right now. Get it over with. But when I sat down to think about what I would say, I'm in a group called EO, and we do this lifeline thing whenever we have a member. I always call my mom and dad right after, because some of my friends have overcome things like Tracy just described about my dad, abuse, neglect, whether it's divorce, whatever. All I remember about being a kid was being happy all the time. I had a great childhood, and that's because God blessed me with Bob and Rose Lutz as my parents. And it really makes me sad that my mom can't be here. But I know she's in all our hearts. Like so many kids, my dad was my hero. But I had the privilege of having a dad that literally was a superhero. You saw those pictures. He's when your dad leaves for work in a bulletproof vest, the dark shades, a dark suit, several guns, and some mornings he's walking out with a sniper rifle. That's not no ordinary dad. And my dad was born to be a Secret Service agent, and he was straight out of Central Casting for it. And I am telling you, as a kid, it was the coolest thing in the world. 6'2", barrel-chested, and stronger than any of us have ever known. He was freakishly strong. And my God, was he intimidating. He had this look on his face. Tracy and I, he never had to spank us or anything. It was that one look, and man, we were going to do whatever he told us to do. I bet there's a lot of bad guys out there that when they saw that look, they knew they were in trouble, right? And that's what my dad did. He went out to, guard the most important people and to get the bad guys. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. What made my dad really special, though, is he carried with himself an aura, and you've all seen it, that he could do anything. He could accomplish anything. If the chips were down, my dad was that guy. I know in a more appropriate way to describe him would be like, a living James Bond. But to me as a kid, he was Superman. And as I grew older, I had the privilege of meeting agents that my dad worked with. And they would tell me stories, not as long as my dad, but they would still tell us stories. And they would tell me that my dad was the one that always looked out for them. That if they were on an assignment that was extremely difficult or dangerous, they wanted Bob Lutz with them. That they knew they could count on him and depend on him. My dad rang that bell every day he needed to. And I realized, I'm an idealistic little kid. These agents looked at my dad in much the same way I did. And so as I got older and I talked to these guys, I realized, my dad was Superman, right? It was so cool. One of my fond memories is in 4th grade, we had like bring your dad to work day. And my dad ended up going last. And all these dads, their normal jobs, lawyers, accountants, whatever. And a bunch of them would bring like pencils for all the kids or calculators or something like that. My dad goes last. My buddy Mike, I remember his dad went right before us and gave everybody calculators. And all the kids are like, oh, you got anything free as a kid? You're playing with it. My dad goes up and he has a prototype briefcase that the Secret Service was testing. That from when they walk along the limo, if they slam it on the ground, it was spring-loaded so an Uzi would come up and they could start shooting. I remember the look on Mike's face was like, some of those calculators weren't that cool. And needless to say, my dad was the hit of Bring Your Dad to Class Day. Can you imagine doing that in today's world? That would go viral and my dad would be like arrested. Our family got to do some really cool things because of my dad's career. We met President Nixon, Ford, Bush won. I actually sat with, my dad snuck me when the Super Bowl was in Detroit, we still lived there. My dad snuck me into the stadium because he was on Vice President Bush's detail. I literally sat in the same suite. I didn't have a ticket. My dad snuck me in, and I sat in the same suite as Vice President Bush for the first half. Second half, I sat with Uncle Hoosie. But what a great memory that is. We also were in the private quarters of the White House on a special tour when around the corner came Ronald Reagan and got to meet him. That sparked a love of history and politics in my life that has never left me. In fact, it was a lot of my dad and I's conversations were about history and history books we read and whatnot. And we also met Donny Osmond, and he thought that was a lot cooler than I did. If you think after my dad retired from the Secret Service that he would have mellowed out and stuff and relaxed in retirement, he didn't. He started a very successful cell phone company, and he always had that fight. My dad loved a good fight, and I mean every kind of fight. When he was 64 years old, we sent him to the Reds fantasy camp, where you get to go play baseball for a week and live like a major leaguer. And my dad told us it was one of the best weeks of his life. And he comes home and he's got his own Reds uniform. So fast forward, it's opening day. I'm just hanging out with some buddies, having a beer. And my buddy Scott Kirby runs up to me. He's like, dude, is your dad here? I said, yeah. And he said, is he wearing a Lutz jersey with number 25? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I said, what happened? He goes, dude, security just took him away. I said, what happened? He's like, well, there's a huge long line for the bathroom. I see your dad. I'm like, oh, that must be Rob's dad. And these two guys, maybe in their 20s, they go up to the wall and just start going to the bathroom right there on the wall. Your dad sees this and gets a look, and he comes up behind and grabs their heads and smashes them together. And these guys turn around and say, dude, your dad's just brawling with these kids. Rah, rah, rah. So I go find my dad with security, and he's surprised to see me because, 50,000 people in the stadium, what are the chances I'm going to find out about this? And I walk in, and he's kind of got this little bit surprised to see me, but a little sheepish, and he's like, I just looked at him and went, Dad, seriously? And he looked up at me and he said, Rob, those damn kids were pissing on the wall. Sorry, Bishop. I should have said Pete. I apologize. And then he followed up with, don't tell your mother. Even at 64 years of age, he was always ready for the fight. But just as cool as my dad's career was, what made him a great dad was he filled me, this is out of order, I apologize. He filled me with love, hope, encouragement, and belief. My mom and dad told us all the time that they believed in us. They told us they encouraged us. They showed us time and time and time again that if we ever needed them, that they would be there. And they told us all the time that they loved us. No matter what, they knew we would screw up, and we did. I screwed up more than she did. But that they would love us anyway. And you know what happens when you say that again and again and again, and you show that again and again and again to a kid? An incredible thing happens. That kid believes it. And that kid carries that encouragement, confidence, and love in their heart all the days of their life. I wore that love and encouragement and belief of my parents like a suit of armor my entire life. And only from God can that kind of beauty and love overcome so much and show their children that kind of love. And it gives me peace and joy. I'm more grateful and joyous today than I am sad, guys. I am so grateful that he was my dad, that we had the relationship we did. And I know he's at peace, and I know he's an eternal joy. I really, really do. I believe that with all my being. Dad, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for all the games at Catch, for all the games we went to, for developing that love I had from politics and history, for the Cincinnati Reds. Thank you for everything you did for me, which was so much. I couldn't repay it in even with an eternity. But here's what I need you to know. That wasn't just an idealistic little boy. You were always my hero. You really were Superman. But thanks most just for being a super dad. We love you, and we'll see you again.